95% of warming happened in the decades of the season. The world's good drying out emissions not people. Students and how big obvious hard economy so also warming. Majority of scientists expect warming with 30 years and 82% expect habits of big effects to drive the ocean to return hottest. Humans lack capacity to stop warming, and existential threat could exist at 1.5 degrees. It's anthropogenic, underestimated, and fast that in adult 24. Variability can explain temperature could be permanent. Just rights may be understated, focusing on likely low and a false security. There's a high probability of cases carbon open ocean reaching saturation. Is that clear ocean will continue to rate cloud sensitivity, may capture heat loss by students, albedo, observer, entry, and there's a little warming have assumptions that might not hold, such as method being reduced, defacing sequestration, does presence on the New York taxonomic species estimates even so all across the GG solidity could be warming that across stable points only low emissions void emission critical temperatures, acidification induced food shortages, cost exchange and crib 23 conflict with food shortages leading to disputes between the fish accidental threats trials of nuclear conflict, even limited conflict kill 2 billion is nuclear winter conservative fair short for the wars on nuclear strong warming the frost in the hands of warlords. Every bit of mitigation matters. Renewables are inevitable now, but too slow to prevent warming. Paul, that's 24. Surgery renewable to the resist so inevitable Trump with the solely cheapest basically it's a clear clean future. Only question is how fast the renewable rep is inevitable. No focus will be in making sure this happens quickly as possible. There's time to waste this year. It's the hottest in history, and there's evidence super winter arriving new down showing not only did force absorb little carbon islands are emitting literally every panel travel matters now more than ever. Contention 2 is innovation. China is on the cusp of locking in market dominance and the inevitable renewable transition. U.S. innovation policy is key to leapfrog China supply. Allen 25. Solar wind and competitive 2045 battery storage of energy costs geothermal falling nuclear renaissance even cheaper thanks to Chinese new chargers. Invest in a fossil remains standard emerging markets. How to be growth however going to major industrializing with clean energy. Every forecaster agrees to mantle plateau LNG could be short-lived even debate persist. Clean tech is too big. U.S. Canteen leadership attack to China simply on showing disappointing U.S. its innovation first policy. There is still lots behind U.S. rooms currently innovative breakthrough tech that puts country back in the race. U.S. capital can projects are designed to push ahead through its industrial policy where they're trying to catch up. In current tech such as solar focus on next gen tech dominance and establishing foggy tails liquid supply risk like batteries and generating China's graphics and sales bolstering R&D financing the to address bringing positive scale into foreign wholesale demand pull policies to accelerate commercialization. China will corner the European green energy market now. 3 at 25 U.S. torn the blocking clean tech to meet climate targets used considered by China velocity industrial policy to address the issue industrial policy needs to reduce use unlike good emerge making a little complaint about a refensive market. Restore Trump's own climate agency like his energy driven by economics. That gives China a foothold in the European grid plane and competing with Chinese tech is key to have allies and other options. SOS 24. Gather tech between U.S. and China versus security relations of China leveraging penetration for grids. China could lock in and be a provider of choice increase independence if we can clean energy. The issue reduce the gaps to address security risk from China seeing either our options and versus storage microwave can compete against China in this news can minimize security risk provide allies grids not depending on China. U.S. renewables can recapture the market but require more and better innovation. Otherwise Chinese dependence will fracture the EU. March 21 electricity strategy for the unit demonstrating reduction of Chinese European grids. Notice GI acquisitions grant voted rights of Chinese companies and grids directly involves an energy member state to deal entry points of redundance of Chinese renewable and cheapness can make Europe highly reliant. The minister Hoover offers American defense still medically Chinese are confusing in the UK and critics to for Beijing. However, average GI proportion of China suggests a gap to European vigilance, electricity infrastructure, essential cross-border flows into energy solidarity, strengthens European compass, facilities of the EU, crucial importance, foster protection against state from China. Strong EU stops inter-European conflict from inevitable spheres of influence against nuclear. Peace in 25 most important achievement. EU's peace and the future doesn't look at real serious and constant time arms race ended. Conflicts time nuclear combination clubs not easy but EU for us will manufacturing institutions on be vilified use of demonstrations turned down Northern EU's miraculous and checks other risks. Sparva 19. We will harness environmental we can common solution to energy, water, pandemics, pollution, tech. Inequality and migration without organization is totally impossible. Trump that Europe's trade wars and little concern the use committed emotion that EU remains cornerstone EU better equipped to face complex pandemics, etc. EU management turtle swell said which other actor could even multi a lot on track. The United States federal government should adopt an upstream consistently rising border adjusted carbon price of approximately $40 and support a competitive portfolio of low carbon technologies. Contention 3 is solvency. The plan is key. 1. Carbon pricing. It is necessary for the success of any mitigation policy. Bulls 21. The US needs a tax carbon. A tax its first from screen carbon over the tax increase for your offers to send drop data emissions necessary. Future is border adjusted protect competitiveness and alleviate the sun free emissions cuts. Price of advanced leadership is into the Chinese tax not girl subsidies R&D and targeted incentives will be necessary but without a price competitive effectively insufficient. Only pricing shifts consumption, consistently penalizes all carbon sources and backstops emissions reductions from green R&D. Last year 21 to risk will encourage consumer choice with several sending incentives. Joshua Sunder it's the worst and difficult to address the price would affect all emissions and provide long-term stability. Companies industrial buildings suppress schedules increase with GDP impacts the GDP evidence spending we can't settle leave neutral to equal the magnitude of the prices. Maximal mitigation is key. Warming is the product of more than unpriced externalities making a predictable price path necessary but not sufficient. Vendetta 21 pricing is absolutely necessary but not sufficient. We have a massive challenge and can't rely on one instrument and hope the short period to avoid catastrophe. The silver market fears and playing not just externalities or knowledge spillovers also policy can simulate credits in one way with pricing. The IT is not for how you ability to make investors long run planning. No prices company provided certainty about a pricing path that's more important than complementary incentives credits. Pricing is less costly than ever and the reductions makes available markets make their decisions to make electricity first building or transportation. It's just better tax or country to be combined take a deep decarb perspective instead of reducing emissions in the market. Cost imposition deters fossil market entry at all unlike solely renewable promotion. With Hagen 15 the best way to fight warming is price the price internalizes warming blocking fossil in the crest of the price makes it costing however due to badly functioning limited to the direct subsidy necessary to the price relative to policies such as placement, tax or subsidy counter to such yield worse outcomes and new policies such policies encourage fossil owners to downward completely cause rapid burning, acceleration, warming, tax forces, market penalties cover this green paradox such as rise of subsidies without taxing then in this green paradox as higher extraction occurs when oil in the face subsidy shortens oil in the face of the accelerates warming in short run. Pricing imports prevents leakage and induces modeling necessary for global solvency, but without a domestic price, countries will roll back protection and subsidize emitting industries. Wolfram 23. Tariffs will receive unfair benefits imposing carbon costs into CBA tariff to keep attacking better disadvantage for the producers relative to U.S. is good, unravel efficient policies, and as foreign producers expect a level field as possible, producers see accountability subsidies being competition. Such good unravel policies result in timid governments for these reasons only border adjust and the presence of cost increasing policies. U.S. adjusting could adjust leakage for random equalizing costs for all serving U.S. market metals. So double pricing is coupled with subsidies and subsidy partial. Now the insufficient reduction strength the rationale for risk adjustments is induced virtuous policy abroad of foreign adjust for political government for the transition cost losing policies. Turkey to its own price and result to EU. Also Russia adjusting is key for encouraging maximal foreign mitigation and targeting non-traded emissions. Real 21. Price equivalent is needed to calculate adjustments for reporting. Countries use processes of the pricing routine incentives for countries to implement strong emissions policies to the extent a jurisdiction is successful in boosting exports of emissions intensive goods, pursuing mitigation that favors tradable sectors as leads emissions rise, will on higher price equivalent for and the need for emissions tax in non-tradable sectors. It covers enough emissions to incentivize global mitigation. Belly 19. The following BCE strikes balance between legal durability, ease of limitation performance scope should be limited in imports of incentive reductions like carbon exports, including only sectors with high carbon, reducing competition to global renewal, still serving significant benefits. Such sectors tend to be influential constituencies. The inclusion threshold will be about propensity to run transshipment. BCE should avoid exempted countries can risk flows of carbon goods shift through such countries. BCE could adjust for carbon price of foreign countries, including explicit and implicit prices, growing database provided, improving data for carbon traded goods, accounting for accomplishing consistency, exit-based world input, GRM, GTAB, and OCD's database with administrative ease. Work 21, charge importers for carbon data is already available. IE trucks emissions by sector project emissions could be interpreted with E16 data is ample enough, asking goods where data is available to cover 80% of traded carbon. BCE workers have subsidy data already used many use GGP to identify impact to resolve conflicts with source data from suppliers and facilities across countries of origin, companies trade tickets, for carrier lower adjustment, customs enforces duties, adds no more complexity to disclosure. Importers already engaged in ITR already conducts due diligence, expects overseas facilities, Justice Department supports by pursuing penalty fraud to R&D portfolio. It is necessary for commercializing next generation abatement. Chong 23 competitors investing in low carbon tech capture growing clean markets, notably China, in nuclear capture, EVs, hydrogen capture, made before the IRA are the starting point. Innovation requires more than basic funding proactive investment along with private competition, clean energy. The U.S. lead is challenged by China. Second, the U.S. are harder to beat. Aviation, shipping, trucking solutions, what's commercial scale more than content integration, complex systems, leverage business need large R&D for an uphill battle, process of capital intensive addition because there is a difference in electricity from coal versus wind and externalities such as climate unaffiliated origin can distinguished from incumbents investing in peanut price market fields are profoundly ocean. Marshall Indian investing in dollars should scale to reserve climate fit for humans. Allocation is competitive and goal driven. Vogel 21. I will probably get another card. Public missions will be less vulnerable to capture of government to clear goal and increase support for renewable energy to make it harder for the also industry for the overship. Set of audience programs include neutral experts, consumer reps, industry, force industry, best just benefits, public goods and power actors removed from sexual interest. Scotty should set guidelines for allocation review boards should evaluate outcomes on a regular basis. The government should favor tools as vulnerability capture such as competition. Innovation alone causes international free riding in the absence of pricing. Junk 21. Innovation based like global urges the private sector hardly can build the evidence of rules for free riding all nations, spending a consumers free ride. The aspects are also negative conscious urges to transition more nation trades away to free rides. Buying cultural diffusion around the world, be climate change, power down on R&D and trade through each country shows diffusion ceases and flips to diversity nullifies expectations. Further encouraging diffusion naturally happens is all free and inflation is more coordination, power development is needed. Deployment is needed.
Back to advantage one, just renewables succeed.
Advantage one, renewables succeed. Rebuttals 22. RES is misleading and wrong. Solar is renewable and most materials used will be recoverably and the service like hundreds of peer reviews discovered. Hold on, I missed the last word there. Solutions. Documented solutions. Documented solutions.
Oh, no, you're good.
Okay.
Okay. Does the plan do a border carbon adjustment?
It does.
Is it equivalent to the domestic price?
Yes.
Does it apply to all countries?
Normal means is it would apply to all countries, yes.
Okay. This innovation advantage, I guess, why does China have a motive to corner the European green energy market?
Because it's economically profitable to
Why?
get a lock on an entire continent. Makes them a bunch of money. Plus, there's also a geopolitical interest for them because it increases their leverage over European states.
Okay. I guess why is renewable energy sufficient to fill in?
So the EU will choose either China or American renewables. American renewables are good because they prevent China from gaining undue leverage over Europe.
Okay, this Barford evidence, what other risks does it isolate?
Water, pandemics, pollution, tech, inequality, migration, conflicts, pandemics.
Okay, I want to talk about the plan text quickly. What is supporting a competitive portfolio of low carbon technologies?
Subsidies. We think the way that the term competitive, how that would mean is the US would set up like literally competitions or like prize systems for technology. So
So we outline technology that the government wants to see, maybe in a hard-to-abate sector that has to fulfill these criteria. The first person to develop a technology that meets those criteria gets the prize.
Okay. The warming advantage, I guess, how does acidification cause food shortages?
Because it destroys ocean food chains, and then that results in a lack of fish.
Okay, I guess what's the scenario for extinction? Is it food wars or just like starvation?
Yeah, wars over fish.
Just fish? Or are there other resources?
There might be other resources. The one that is outlined in Cribs specifically is fish, although our warming impact evidence does outline wars over other resources.
What would those other resources be?
Water, food. Our last dev also says geoengineering to create conflicts. I know that's not really a resource war.
Does the app result in any geoengineering?
No.
The solvency section, I guess, why are research and development portfolios necessary when like R&D for low carbon tech has been happening for years?
So that was insufficient because a lot of by private companies, a lot of technology falls into the valley of death where like it can't really scale up commercially. And we also think the IRA was insufficient because it didn't target hard-to-abate sectors like aviation, shipping, trucking. Those things were all listed by name and are strong evidence.
What about the ATH is specifically necessary to incentivize those forms of innovation if like scalability has failed in the SQO?
Well, that's our argument. It's failed in the SQO, but the plan's new system for competitive support overcomes those previous failures.
I just sent the one in C.
You need this.
Yeah, that'd be great actually. I appreciate it. Okay. It's been sent now. While people are pulling it up, the order is 7. The warming advantage, the innovation advantage, Solvency. Oh. Jayhawks, you'll have that.
Still voting for me.
Okay, no worries.
The counterpoint text on the 6 off was wrong. I just have the correct one on the chain.
Yeah. Let me get a second to get that one as well. Okay, I'm ready if Graham's good.
Yeah.
Yes.
The United States should adopt a policy that forces where it's enacted new tariffs or duties to be China, check it on 19 carbon. Tariffs impact directly to flight speculations, cost of exports will increase demand, drops reduction in revenue, the decline will affect China's econ, causes global war, right? 25th collapse of China and America impact the world. China is susceptible to collapse, econ, centralized political stability, certain large new capacity, other WMT instability is very valuable to belligerent econ. Collapse like in China, purpose war, G could be ousted, factions rise, creating a civil war with dukes and WMT's total collapse in China would collapse in global econ, everything is affected. Next up, politics is that tax cuts passed down, per all 4-3 as represents culture reconciliation. The Senate GOP is charging ahead, Senate reps accounted methods as introduce some issues in the House were called the proposal very dust House pressure criticize swing and miss Freedom Caucus member Klein had another Freedom Caucus member trust the Senate to do anything again got another told the Senate but will very disappointing the Senate was always expected to find 51 votes but the House has to get on the same page while fiscal hawks have issues vulnerable reps also have problems ultimately lawmakers rely heavily on trying to push the bill through hardly any reps will stand in the way of the president's agenda what will have to happen is for the president to step in plans for his massive fights fire 19 leaders who embrace their craft of climate policies facing political backlash concerns about cost of curbing emissions food and global revolt and probably will scale back ambition last time Congress considered President Carbon is fragmentation, backlash, costs could defeat the effort. There's a lot of political pressure. Key to outcompete China's mid-24 R&D recession made worse by the expiration of Trump cuts expensing helps American innovators discover the next game-changing idea, ensures America remains competitive with China. Businesses will expense 20% of R&D. China provide corporate welfare of 200% R&D. R&D expensing creates a massive econ boost across border, broader econ. Restore and deductions generate 70 bill in R&D and 21 mil jobs. Extinction product 21 China new. Tech 2, if to one or the E or SCS, they can lead to war, new tech, increasingly uncertainty shows balance of power, war to reservation, war particular escalation, attack US, but it comes to defense, greatest risk of nuclear from regional, conventional, Washington, retail, China, quadruple arsenal risk is real. The United States, next off, United States federal government should institute a carbon tax and output-based rebate. The United States federal government should enforce consumption taxes on goods produced by emissions-intensive trade, exposed farms, counterplan solves, Fisher et al. 22, BCS trigger, trade wars, undermine co-op, instrument, OBREITE, firms receive allowances, firms reduce emissions, but do not bear cost reliefs, competitiveness, OBR with consumption taxes behind the border, mimics full BCAs or OBR address leakage taxes. Price signal BCA is controversial under WTO rebate as undoubtedly WTO compliable. Oil to add their low slot 4.3 prices on the percentage traders adjusted tariffs that affect demand for everything, including energy for oil. A focus shifts to global growth, which is likely down. There's uncertainty markets wanting to see how trading partners retaliate. This is worst case. The market fear tariffs has negative effect the econ. Anything that has negative effect to manage all oil demand. AF increases, then board off 20 absent investment production declines. Capital dry up once demand peaks. Investors no longer provide to a sector in decline. Supply decline faster, leading to a shorter higher prices boost. Revenues petro states profit from transition. High prices cause petros state aggression. Extinction. Ashford 22 leaders in oil states have done some better, including Russia, Mideast states, and African and Asian nations. As oil prices rise, so does military spending. When prices crash, spending drops. That's confirmed. Oil is correlated with active nuclear capacity. Excessive spending can easily increase confidence. Funding military gives leaders confidence to win. Oil states overconfident leaders are more likely to start wars of society and maintain power. Next off theory, new undisclosed advantages and plans for voters strike net preps used in favor of the app magnified by a small school justifies infinite quantum and disproves 2AC theory. Blocks next is the counterplan. Should I read the new counterplan text in that?
Yeah, I also talked it to you. The first one is fine, but the second section is
Okay.
So read this, and then there will be one that says insert, and then run.
Okay. Counterplan the federal judiciary should, through necessary means, determine that sole federal control over federal lands and interstate commerce is an inappropriate use of federal power, and that the 50 states and sub-federal entities should have authority over federal lands and interstate commerce. The 50 states and relevant sub-federal entities should adopt an upstream, consistently rising border adjustment carbon price of approximately $40 and support a competitive portfolio of low-carbon technology. Solves COVID-24 to following fed domestic powers to states. Fed is bankrupt forces to eliminate subsidies. It gives states loss will be catalyst that ignites devolution for the Fed to be viable and measuring so it can manage needs of the nation. Devolving is possible. Devolving only mechanism to keep the union together. Fed focus on essential responsibilities. State manage environmental standards, energy production. Devolution provides a roadmap identifying Fed's flaws, outlining restructuring plan. 50 states can solve. Diet all 24 national politics session. Shifts after moving for joint action. Exists given Trump co-op is far from guaranteed. Fall to hard RE and raise tariffs. U.S.-China relations are important. Pronounced impacts of national governments play a crucial part instead of leading states chart their own paths. California requires 100% from RE and why reduce emissions by 40%. Joint initiatives between California and Chinese agencies on clean energy effective to advance the U.S.-China partnership. Collaborative and Trump retreat from Paris created to avoid California. Help the California membership and signed a series of agreements implementing commitments to reduce emissions in coordination with Chinese counterparts. Failures existential work in 23. Further erosion of trust between the West and China. Reducing collab will be a profound self-inflicted where we must resist and manage climate change pandemics and time conscious unit reframing of China's relationship essential to avoiding planetary catastrophe. Want me to do LG?
Yeah, I don't know why. I think it might be on Trump. Just say 7.
That's fine. 7, LNG exports high. Williams 4-1. The U.S. exported record amount of LNG in March, already the largest exporter. Trump promised to unleash energy production was buoyed by the ramp up of Plagueis mines. Plant Europe sucked up most of the exports. LNG exports are key to European energy stability. Walnut COVID 24 Europe would now be able to produce Russian gas as it did. U.S. energy's world security cannot be stressed. Resiliency applauded West Mosey. Ukraine is a symbiotic energy partner to energy security. Advantages are high resilient, aid impact and recovery of energy generation. Support is needed now to defend democratic values. Decarb GUSM, levy 12 exports. Reduce natural gas reducing consumption. Reduces exports. Implement carbon price limits. Gas prices will rise. Exports are no longer be viable. Exports decline modest. Price can raise gas use by 5 billion cubic feet. Erode all edge. U.S. exports would not materialize. Extinction Shalom 22 succumbing to Putin's demands is not the best way to minimize nuclear success. Encourage other nuclear bullies. Israel, China, no giving in would provoke victims to Russia. Acquire nuclear arms. Taiwan, Japan, Iran, Saudi. Others seek risk of accidental war. Terrorism increases exponentially given into Russian demands increases dangers of nuclear war. Now, the warming is... Okay. You're chill. I guess these will be sent out.
No, they're all.
Okay. No warming impacts. Adaptation text inevitable, no tipping points. Tail end impacts are exaggerated, no acidification impact, more 21 acidification is misleading. pH varies from 7.5 to 8.3. This is alkaline direct. Trees take up large percent of emissions. pH does not cause extinction, no reason to believe species lost ability to calcify at higher levels. Ancestors survive millennia during which conditions change rapidly. Species proven resilient changing conditions foster rapid evolution and adaptation. Vertebrates produce armor. They reproduce annually. Thousands of offspring increases genetic mutations suited to change of species or exposed to wider ranges of pH, CO2, temp, and salinity. Seawater has powerful buffering to resist change in pH. Slow solves tipping points, weighing 23 climate. Sluggish on human timescales. Components change over millennia. Arctic ice declines steadily. Theories that abruptions in a monsoon circulation have led to rest and methane released over millennia. Media sees worst case impact and invoking discredited hypotheses. Mitigation will eliminate feedbacks by methane progress, reduce worst case scenarios. Now the innovation advantage, low energy prices, key to AI innovation. LIGO 24 AI, sci-fi to cornerstone of the econ. Largest obstacle to rise of AI is misguided energy policy. March to net zero insistence. We replace fossil fuel with RE, wind, and solar. Pessimist threat to AI, ill-advised push by climate alarmists to transition from reliable and affordable sources is incompatible with energy that AI will require. AI will necessitate a huge increase in demand. Wind and solar cannot provide enough energy to meet demand, let alone the increase when AI data centers take toll on the grid, embrace clean burning natural gas. The AI races worldwide, China, Russia, pouring the U.S. must gain AI supremacy. AGI solves everything. Walsh 19. Intelligence may figure out how to deflect asteroid, prevent superpression, prevent nuclear war, eliminate climate change, eradicate disease, or design biological defenses to neutralize engineer pathogen. If AI becomes super intelligence, then nothing will be impossible. We could colonize the stars, live forever by uploading our consciousness, eliminate all pain. We could create existential eco-catastrophe. The only obstacle is intelligence. We can actively shape how AI develops. It can turn catastrophe to eco-catastrophe. This is AI, the cause and solution of all existential risk. AI is critical to reducing emissions. More 21. AI can accelerate our response to climate change. No time to wait. CO2 levels higher than ever, even with stay-at-home order. Sea levels are rising in 2019 with the hottest year. AI assists industries fulfill 45% of Paris Agreement. AI will reduce emissions 16% waves. AI can impact CC, improve efficiency. AI improve power efficiency 50%. AI predict wind in advance to optimize wind farms. Marked at wind farms now. Solvency can't solve wells. 18. Carbon taxes even at high rates insufficient. Ambitious carbon pricing has not delivered. Green energy revolution has not been the curve of emissions. Still. Growing proportion of global energy from RE has not grown. The market has not responded, adding new capacity to saying so we need overhauls of cement. Third largest emitter. Cryptocurrency produces as much CO2 as a million flights skill required. It has about 30 years to remake its infrastructure, agricultural industry, and culture. Many nations with carbon pricing, neither their emissions or declining money to citizens generate support, but have perverse effects leading consumption undisturbed. Accelerate the green paradox. Northern Sugar 24 climate legislation give incentive to restrict more, leading to lower prices, depletion, and consumption. As CT would be absorbed by rents, legislation might not lead to desired reductions. Green paradox supply is reallocated. Strengthening RE could reduce prices, causing producers to increase supply. Do not view current RE as a threat, but instead distraction. Oil market is sensitive to climate laws, limiting resource use. Available resources are shifted to the short-term renewables. Fail. Reach 23.
No, we have an audio.
Okay, hurtling towards irreversible overshoot. Nod to 23. Civilization is overshooting planetary boundaries. Tech alleviate individual scarcities. Increase with the growth resultant ecological overshoot. Climate change is only attempt to reducing emissions will not solve 9 PB. Climate change, ozone acidification, ozone depletion, phosphorus cycles, freshwater, land change, biodiversity loss, atmospheric aerosol pollution. In 2009, 3 PBs exceeded recently. It exceeded breach of only a few. Naughty was cut at only a few.
Okay, we're gonna prep for 1 second. 10 minutes. You have to Google.
Yep.
C for John. Save. Yeah, good. Okay, 9:55. You good?
Yeah.
Okay, the China counterplan, it forswears new tariffs. Why does this solve the tariffs that have already been put on the books?
Seems like the U.S. was reversing them is a good faith signal to China.
But you said forswears new tariffs.
Yes. The House just put a bill into place that's like, we are going to undo these tariffs because
so
they realize
you have to
that
win that passes now.
Well, yes, but there's like.
That also makes one of your advantages not inherent. So.
Oh, okay. Politics. How will tax cuts be funded? Is it just like, or will they not be funded? Is it just deficit spending?
Deficit spending.
Okay, Smith card.
I'm right about that, yeah.
Let's see here.
Okay.
U.S. representative of Missouri's 8th congressional district. Why is a political hack qualified to speak to your internal link?
Well, our internal link is based on the justification for it. We have also cited other people, and I guess the one in our arts also will, that says that like Chinese businesses doing things like expending 20% of like R&D is sufficient to allow them to overtake the U.S. in manufacturing.
Okay, the oil VA. The plan might increase prices, but it also reduces oil demand. So why does that mean oil states make more money overall?
It says, quote, capital will dry up once demand peaks. our argument is that high oil
Okay.
prices induce petro-aggression. It's irrelevant to the supply of it. It is just a question of how much money are they
It's
getting
also a
from
question of
sales.
short-term conflicts, not like long-term demand for
So
short-term.
you both answered that question, but neither of you answered that question. So the plan shrinks the overall amount of global demand for oil. Even if prices like maybe go higher, like why does that mean oil states rake in more money?
Because oil prices are higher. This is like Econ 101. I'm very confused as to
Okay.
what the question is. Like, our argument is very...
My next question, the delegation counterplan, you fiat both the Fed and the states, correct?
Yeah.
We fiat the federal judiciary and the state service.
Okay, what could this like perverse use of neg fiat leave the AF to say?
One, y'all won the Copeland, we're Minnesota PW, so we would make arguments that that's illegitimate. But second is we're the golden standard because one, it is textually and functionally competitive. Two, it's key to neg ground because otherwise we're hosed on the topic.
Okay.
If you want me to read the theory blocks, I will.
We also
it-
think you should have like authority keywords.
Yes.
So the case, why does AI need to be powered with fossil fuels?
The Talgo piece of evidence says that fossil fuels are they're more potent source of power. It says that renewable energy, wind, solar, etc. pose threats to AI because it forces a fast transition that companies cannot internalize, which is key to that innovation.
Okay, so I seriously did not hear an answer to that. Is it just like they're more reliable? It's like Texas,
Yes.
for example, when they had a big freeze, the thing that failed was their gas plants, right? So like,
Okay.
why are renewables not a more reliable source of power?
Well, our argument is that it's about funding, and the reason is like a massive uptake in renewables forces those trades off. Fossil fuels, more lucrative, allows for funding, it's also more sustainable.
Okay, you good?
NASA. Okay. 9:30.
I just put where the cards were marked and they can watch it.
That's fine.
Okay. That, if you want it to be that needs to be shortened to that, yes, sir.
Will you grab that?
Sorry, I didn't mark them.
The Wi-Fi's giving me some trouble, so it's uploading to the email chain. While it's doing that, I'll just give an order really quickly. So, advantage 1, norming. Advantage 2, innovation. Solvency. Disclosure theory. The rebates counterplan. The states counterplan. Politics. The reverse oil DA. China trade. LNG. So one more time quickly, advantage 1, 2, solvency, disclosure theory, rebate counterplan, states counterplan, politics, reverse oil, China DA, LNG DA.
I mean, it's probably just because it's like really
Goodness, I thought it would still be uploaded when I finished that. Okay, there we go. It should be set.
It came through for me. It's scanning it for viruses. Google has told me that there are no viruses. So, do you have it?
Yeah, I'm good now.
I think we're both good.
Okay. All three judges good? Excellent.
Yes, impact of warming. 1 is Venus Day, Earth will be too hot for human habitation. 2 is nuclear war, competition, dwindling food, water, and nuclear resource wars. 3 is salinity, rising sea levels affect all fresh water, which is Vandenberg drop. You should air half. Uncertainty over extinction threshold ought to maximize caution because they don't know at what point warming will get to extinction. No adaptation. 1, growth is low now, precluding uptake. 2, it crowds out investment productivity, precluding scale, which is the Vandenberg evidence. 3, it's politically costly and takes too long, which is the thesis of all their DA links. Warming outweighs levees and seawalls from extreme effects, which is Lenten. Yes, tipping points. Slowness assumes collapse, natural carbon drawdown. And CCS at scale, which is literally a pipe dream that's Lenten and Holthaus cloud. And ice dissipates with increased heat, which speeds up warming in the future. Empirical natural warming pathways are also wrong because it's centuries faster now, which is our Spratt evidence. Food shortages go nuclear, fish are key to state and civil stability, which their impact defense does not assume. Rides cause loose WMDs and drawing and turning extinction from civil strife. Advantage 2, the turn is non-unique. 1, renewables are inevitable. Allen says exponential cost decline causes quick uptake now. 2, fossil fuels and climate change spike electricity prices. Marcy and 24. America's the job by electricity bills killed fossil fuels, climate change, volatile gas prices, and economic coal plants and costs of Hamburg are good against weather of recent key bills keep rising, clean energy, smaller prices, lower bills, states with individual racial rights, low inflation. 3, AI breaks the grid now. Halbert 24, vast loss of US risk of insured power, data center delivery, living tools, gas, demand surging with projection of electricity 70 times what it was, already debate session conference, the numbers are staggering, cut at staggering, no link, the plan starts low, initially low taxes, growing business shocks, that's Van Dender evidence, the tax minimally raises prices in the short term, LPRE 21, carbon price increase, price of electricity, but moderate about low carbon tech delivery prices, price increases less than fossil fuel, for price increase, incentive for electric use, in response includes a reconfigure regeneration towards low carbon technology, resulting in lower prices then applied as a price increase substitution, lowers intensity generating company, couple of shares suppressive in the carbon price. There's no impact. Well, 24 years clearly falling behind China and AI. US is underinvesting while becoming stagnant or even in the last 12 years. Is over 65% of funding tied up. This method is highly available to the GDs, taking into account like science project. China has more patents than 13 to 15 good players. The US is falling behind AI patents drive innovation. Low leadership impact, swaying 21 ambitions over the yellow, greatly exaggerated, not existential, little interest in exporting government innovation with the attractiveness would prove limited future not relevant for countries including vast savings rates, state making, industries, product control for sectors and all information is not sustainable, cut at not sustainable. The argument about totalitarian surveillance is ridiculous, reject it. O'Connor 18, if destruction is possible, why is something that saves humanity then the planet, they'll take leaps evidential for bad as well as good ones. AI can't solve warming. Cobra 24A can be used if we promise it. It's exacerbating to prove efficiency renewable. It seems like such games will keep up with it going to advance. That's why Alban argues breakthrough is needed. Next argument, the solvency page 1 the past taxes were low and subsidies fill in for gaps in pricing, which is the Van Dender evidence. It solves carbon lock-in as well. 2, subsidies solve energy and transport emissions where pricing fail, which is the Chong evidence. 3, no lock-in subsidies leave for all the gas switch or rising price makes them uncompetitive, which is slash off. We do not need to do rebates inside of the plan to consumers, which means we avoid that solvency deficit. No green paradox because the plan prices fossil fuels into the crust. However, that is a deficit to all of their counterparts if they delay the tax. It's not too late to prevent warming, but their now evidence concedes extinction from warming, so the watches get state defense. Disclosure 3 argument. We do not get to disclose arguments that we have not read before. We disclosed that it was a carbon tax affirmative as well as the advantages that we had read. Not disclosure is good. 1, it takes the coaches out of the room and test debaters on their skill, which is better for small schools because it allows them to test all of the research they've done in preparation of the NDT. 2 is fairness. It creates a moral hazard for the day to always disclose what we've read, which means that it is impossible for us to gain an advantage by breaking new, which also disincentivizes the innovation of new arguments, cross-examination, checks all their offense, rebate, perm, do the kind of perm, do both. They can't solve. 1, maximal mitigation. Single instrument solutions fail the magnitude of cloud warming, leave no stone of emissions unturned, giving tipping point uncertainty. That's Van Dender. 2 is salience, absent subsidies, firms opt out. For austerity incentivization, Kennedy 19, and tax will discourage from the carbon reduction by adding cost of bottom line, leaving less capital for investment. This means that firms will find other means of mitigating the tax firms offer lower risk, such as fire, reducing wages, increasing revenues, expanding production, increasing emissions, or hedging markets. However, a tax also prevents credible decreased perceived riskiness of carbon reduction, allowing firms to save tax dollars and earnings. That matters. It continues intense industrial pollution, which is one issue. Chong 3, innovation spillovers, pricing alone can't stimulate an immediate return on investment. Free riding inhibits innovation incentives, absent government fill-in of lost return on investment. That's the Van Dender evidence, including rebates in the VCA, means that countries will ship their dirty goods overseas, so it means that it has a negative effect of warming. States kind of one. Perm to both, it shields politics because it diffuses blame for the plan. State and federal fiat is a voting issue. It's unfair, legitimizes Lopez, beats every deficit, and has zero literature, ruining education. The 2 and R can only go for 1 layer of fiat. It can't solve, strike down A, foreign adornment, commons clause, Sheldon 18, foreign commons clause, privacy laws, becomes to be trade, stable taxation, good frustrating uniformity, like these, shine by some reward, client policy grounds, important measures, solve leakage, B, import, export clause, Gorsh 23, import, export clause, prohibiting from imposing any duties, the imports is with that to imports of foreign countries. That matters. It causes leakage, which zeros warming solvency. And it also fails to convince other states to act on climate change if it can't do a BCA, which is our mailing evidence. The argument about the states kind of solving renewables is also, or solving relations, is also solved by the permutation and is stumped by tariffs now, which will be on the China TA. Chinese relations are in the gutter by 25. Chinese is like the US talks reflecting everybody. Rio, Trump wants to Stonewall, China both are hawks done. In the boot to anything, Trump tariffs, Chinese goods, and Russia, there was no negotiations. Their impact evidence also says climate is an existential threat, so they don't get impact defense politics.
Tax cuts will not pass now. Procedure spending and deficit prevented peak on 4.3. No cost tax cut is one of several components that could cause setbacks. The actual bill included rate of spending cut will be difficult. House Republicans lay out concerns criticizing the current baseline of lack of spending cuts. I can't imagine any rule of talks in the House walk away. No trade off. The bill's month away. Bolton 324 cents like a fast Trump's tax agenda until well into the fall. It doesn't unleash growth. Krill 330 their fourth trickle down tax cut in decades. None of the delivered promises of broad price rate. The famously pending tax generated growth each time resulted in wages stagnate. A wealth concentrates cross supply China defense from advantage 2 to this page. PC is low now. Launch list Lewis 36. Trump has been saying a piece like a drunk maybe set up right off a cliff. Trump's rule just under 1.35 thing. Cost of levies in one direction. Tariffs, massive addition said. Cost through the roof. Crypto reserve. Musk and Doge plays terribly. Trump made the art of alienating allies and majority support Ukraine. Trump mandate is finally coming due. PC is fake under Trump. Threats of party line votes better. Explain politics. Newell 329. This is useful to explain how legislation works. Started the cat's job is to reassure members just to keep moving after compromise. Leaders' message will change. Voted for this one or else. Conservatives will be pursued to keep moving until at some point Trump could have threatened to destroy their lives if they don't make them over the public thumpers. Laundry list. Kaminsky 331. Censorship bill. Injunction bill. And C. FPV rollbacks. Waker nomination and budget legislation. Restore DC budget. Trump pressure chamber to take up the bill. Trump signaled the TikTok deal. JP Hawks are where the stablecoin bill's major reflects votes the oil DA. It's non-unique and impact is inevitable. A, peak demand, future energy growth will be met with green. B is investment, hydrocarbon capital is stagnant and lower the renewables, which is the Allen evidence. If we win renewables are inevitable, that will increase the price of oil because it's worthless. Successful renewable transition devalues rents of fossil fuel exporters. Family 17, a significant reduction of the world's use of fossil fuels could occur if there is a broad transition to alternative energy supplies such as nuclear or renewables. A fall in fossil fuel demand will lead to a fall in fossil fuel prices. This might lead to existing revenue restrained projects to remain commercially viable will be less valuable. This in return made emission rents valuable. Value will be gone forever. Widespread EV rollout collapses export economies leads to price wars. Euro 23, the potential impact of EVs is fuel displacement lines with a high case scenarios. It could ring alarm bells for oil and gas, especially for nations heavily reliant on oil exports. Every warning of the industry to strategize by 2040, even with the rise of EVs, oil demand may still hover between 78 millimeters per barrel. Intense competition for market share by lead to price wars. Our evidence also says that if prices rise for oil, that might mean that people just shift in demand, which prevents the profits from being accrued by fossil states. China did. Permutation due both to the uniqueness counterplan. It obviously solves the link. Just threatening tariffs still destroys trade. Bottom 25. Trump not actually impose tariffs we could use with leverage so which trade by China. And that you are likely to initiate retaliation. Condo is a voter strict terms of key to PC strategy. Punishing irresponsibility and disincentivize shallow research dismissals. They can keep the gaps as firm theory. It also only prohibits new tariffs, which they were destroyed on in cross-ex. Warming breaks more China. Clear 20. Temperatures increase like a nuclear war. Non-violence more food, water, dwindle. China will break apart as older climate change widespread. Ethnic strife increases nuclear war. Enabling of capture by rogue elements and wars between states of resources. China recession now. Harara in 331 in China. Their fundamental problems. Wages are low. Households low share GDP are cut off from international goods. You are left with tinkering at the edges. Authorities trying cash for clunkers. It's not sustainable problems of currency to save its high. Consumers low. Taxation threatens China's best advantage. Strong trade surpluses widening $1 trillion. Surplus over larger China's non-imported stagnation will play out. And U.S. recession. Alpha 331 sanctions on Russia. Run for a third term tier. It's hard to know. The whole rallies over U.S. and Texas force 40 since 20 years off data. Tank receptions change reality. Consumer sentiment embrace for serious inflation at 8%. Inflation tickets seriously beyond market is concerned. Inflation will top 3%. Inflation narrative can be self-fulfilling. Side with Russia threatening Canada and Greenland score for the EU. The economy suffer. People don't trust U.S. They won't continue to invest in that. Spreads. Roads 331. Trump's the full custody of the taken by China's economies. Conditions starting to spread throughout the world and trading capital flows. No link. The plan starts low, preventing time for economic diversification and revenue generation to continue state support. That's the Van Dender evidence. States model the plan in response to a BCA enabling their own carbon prices, which solves the reason that it would lead to a collapse of Chinese growth. BCAs only affects leakage risk sectors and crediting countries' kind policy solves. Monty 22. Key concern by countries to BCAs ability to impact exports. BC2 feature reduce economic risk versus new obligation to sections to leakage, reduce negative impacts of countries to by credit vending process. BCA office flexibility countries to reduce the burden of change on exporting sectors. LNG. Glut now destroys the market and U.S. shales at peak supply on R25. Current capacity is every LNG only grew 2.1% in 2024. This is peak fossil now growth of demand. Europe is seeing the renewables on U.S. LNG imports of 2%. China imports a short lifeline. Their supplies are waging tariffs and Mozambique, Congo brought LNG bringing new supply Norway, Russia as well. U.S. shale sites more last changes. Our cheap already split. U.S. sites are making the profit. LNG paying more for supply. Trump is going to creating prices. Climate turns LNG conflict and terror makes LNG unsustainable. Parker 25 LNG export food security goods tanker carry 55 almost second target. Terror storm surge and erosion destroy country for flooding imports and harbors disaster come to vaccine common threat global economy resource stress sensibility intention able terrorists to be the threat to peace. No link, cross-apply the argument about the plane starting low, which allows LNG fill and LNG exports to not decline into carbon scenarios. Matches 25 in U.S. affect emissions with the exports of LNG. Emissions effects are supply muted. U.S. LNG exports emissions are measured less than 10% of emissions in areas with high carbon emission. Export volumes are smaller than the year 2 modeling shows the result of U.S. injury. The net zero LNG is not much smaller and can grow with minimal climate impacts. U.S. exports on most areas with highest climate ambition. Allied methane import regs stop Brazil 25 gas least carbon intensive fuel. U.S. gas reduced enter stronger regs and efficient production. U.S. leads the world tech detect injurious methane. Russia gas is much more intensive. Cut at intensive gas is not key to European security. Slide 25 applications by LNG. Arguing LNG does support is good by countries Europe's like it. Unlike it being imported gas, future demand distress is in Europe, it's reducing fossil fuel supply, seeking demand. No Russian World War 25, Russia does shape the wars. Russia lost 300,000 troops, thousands of vehicle ships in air cover, legislation order additional troops, such as weaken the economy, risk popular dissident sanctions, long-term consequences. Walt has cut it long-term consequences.
Just let me know whenever you're ready.
Yeah, let me mark that one really quick.
No worries.
Okay, I'm ready.
Reasons to reject the team was the theory argument on the state's counterplan, condo, and I'm missing anything else.
I do not believe so.
Okay, good stuff. The state's counterplan How does the permutation solve relations when we have made arguments in the 1NC that says that federal action is viewed as disingenuous because Trump?
So one is that it would pass the blame to the states and give the states leadership in climate policy if they were to do the plan in consort with the Fed. If the linking to the China thing is like simply including the federal government, then I think that Trump is probably going to destroy China relations regardless.
Well, our argument makes us, or like our evidence makes like a signaling argument, and it says that like the mutual exclusivity of both is key. So I'm
I have
still
no
confused.
idea what that means.
What?
The mutual exclusivity of
Yeah,
both
it's
is
like
key.
we can only do the Fed, or we can only do the states because China hates federal government action because they perceive it as
Okay, but if every state adopted a carbon tax and started getting climate diplomats in China, it doesn't really matter if the federal government also does the plan.
Also, do you think the Horton card says this? What evidence do you think says this?
the Horton card and the dye evidence, the Dietol evidence.
Nothing burger. I just read it. It does not say that.
Well, I'm a vegetarian, so I don't have burgers regardless. Anyways, China disad, or I guess like the counter plan, same question. How does Perm do both solve the link?
Because it would forswear Trump's tariff agenda that, would have a pretty serious adverse effect on China's economy.
So there's like evidence of like warming turns China. Why?
They are susceptible to food and water shortages that create popular discontent. It's the same reason an economic slowdown would result in the CCP wanting to divert.
Well then I guess my question is like, China already has a bunch of emissions. Are you making like a modeling claim that a US carbon tax solves global emissions? Because that seems a little silly to me.
Yeah, I think that's been clear since the 1XE.
Why?
It would be great if these deficits were on the 1NC. So one, BCA, it induces China to model the plan because that allows them to have green exports that are competitive in markets that are shielded by BCAs.
What green exports?
So if they clean up their domestic economy, then they can ship the same goods to the U.S. because it's produced with green energy.
Wait, but then I guess if that's true, kind of circular, but how would tariffs not preclude that because they think the U.S. is going to tax it regardless?
Well, the BCA is based on carbon intensity of the import, so we wouldn't be able to just say, screw you, we're going to tariff your stuff regardless.
Wait, why? Trump is like obviously going goblin mode. This does not make sense.
For you to have a DA make that argument, Perm do both solves to the uniqueness counterplan solves the reason that impedes the case.
So case statements applicable, we have to go for the counterplan and Perm did the counterplan solves?
No, if your arg is like Trump's going to tariff China, you need that uniqueness counterplan to go for this DA, and our permutation do both means that it precludes those tariffs. So can't hurt solvency then.
10 sir no. Stop. We have 8:45 remaining. Would you mind saying on the email changing?
I got you.
The order will be the state's counterplan, the LNG disadvantage, the warming advantage, the integration advantage, and then the solvency advantage. Should be sent.
Can you go one more time?
Sure. It'll be the state's counterplan, the LNG DA, the case warming page, the innovation page, then the solvency page. Well, anyone needs it again, and then everyone's get it. Okay, Kansas,
Still pulling it up.
that's good.
Got it. Okay, I read.
Okay, anyone not ready? Alright.
The state's current plan sets 100% of the case results in the state prohibition of the act after states exercise enforcement authority granted them by the federal judiciary. That's a COVID confidence evolution is key. COVID 24 evolution curves by government polarization, housing divide, rolling back federal state and before collapse of the nation, the fear of the U.S. is to leave the world several wars of the state trapped and comfortable arrangement of rewards relinquish over their souls. Evolution is the escape of power to the king, community dispersing power to capitally effective with on security, very feasible evolution, roadback, free the federal responsibilities, incapable of managing systems will be governed by small, leader, efficient, and accountable governments. So for me to issue for this part of the debate is they have only read theory on evolution, which means that you should get 100% solvency when win the theory debate later. Now, the top level, the current plan solves creates bilateral climate action between the U.S. and Chinese provinces to solve central roadblock by creating direct channels for cooperation between subnational actors and nations to influence climate conditions. Same as plan, but their siege to centralize, not to die. Evidence failure of wins awaits reparations to subnational action resolves. There's one climate change irreversible tipping point now. They can see that China and the U.S. are the largest America. If they are winning the relations, our logic to assume that there's no world in which they can win. Second, pandemic still spread fast. Heavy puts on the break isolation prevents accessible care for global cooperation to create vaccines, prevention, mitigation, free runaway with tech. We can't control new advances. But you existential rates that internal link towards the innovation advantage now. Proved both creates a double tax. And Parkin Hauser 11. Yes, American cover process under revenue increase consequences of liberty distortions, waste of PC change equity under micro simultaneous application compatible to double taxation drop down. Run 15 double taxation and constitution potential damage practice issue become not as egregious but unconstitutional post decree create decision hold upholds the court of appeals for ruling 3. They can see it in the die evidence and China doesn't Trump and needs a state action to be sure that he'll fall through. Now theory of 50C and multi-actor fiat over demolition is good. One night growth in the ash revolution over is defend federal action restricted the capital is key to test that action by the actor. The topic is fundamentally unlimited otherwise to functional limit state evolution checks back against hundreds of different mechanisms of restriction multiplied by specific sectors that otherwise is what the top of this checks against Australia to only go for preemption 3 after outcome warrant key solves that was across against a killer devolution DA is not our fault they cut them 4 topic specific solvency applicants check Convict Smith reason about climate change which assumes recent momentum. We think the Lopez current plan is good. They don't have a reason why it's wrong. It's in the literature which should be the goal for 5 reciprocity. The current plan fields all 50 states as 1 unitary actor shift 2 authority federal fiat. It's just unrealistic. It just has unrealistic fiat past bureaucracies and Trump 6 advocacy skills limiting decision making to SFG for close and more effective political strategies. That's a Convict 7 after research team to Michael Carter for the best 20 seats and refine arguments 3 NDT 8 it's actually virtually competitive which is theoretically legitimate. Also it's a new app at the NDT round 1 air app next DA LG. Russian nuclear energy coercion enables unprecedented nuclear coercion, food, weaponized both energy supplies and nuclear threats to dominate global politics. This dual level triggered extinction levels for all energy dependent nations rapidly pursue nuclear. Detrimental Russia escalates to nuclear blackmail leads to civilization ending nuclear change. That's the Shalom evidence now. The link debate carbon policies driving decarbs last, the price advantage in reform markets, destroying economic fight to leave LNG exports to surge and domestic gas and pricing across the sector transport and manufacturing sectors make LNG export facilities financially impossible. Lastly, via evidence, carbon tariffs divide, ally to pursue Ukraine. About 23, there's a time it's probably research into the mark of the time of fear, Ukraine and the liberal the countries need to form alliance to risk of free coming to streets to fight mental substance entering United for against Putin, Steve takes too long increases for Russian fossil fuel depends even if a carbon tax doesn't writ large chart and all 23 Steve reduce imports from Russia by 2035 since Steve products are energy intensive they increase in production in coalition countries increase demand for fossil fuels in countries Steve increase in the Russian exports of oil, gas and coal by 7%, oil by 8%, gas by 4%, Steve if US wants to cost Russia by 14%. Now demand is set to increase all 24 Europe's gas market remains favorable to demand for disruption returning decline indigenous supply compatible benefits for leadings. Allergy will be key. We expect after the demand to colder temperature direct demand the asteroid by the rising levels to cover airmancy, cut the card, and airmancy now. The exports today LNG is business and business is moving. Trump unleashed U.S. LNG potential and undercut Russian crisis. They can see the framing issue for new tariffs aren't taking effect and have exemptions for things like LNG to export capacity. Right fast now.
no terminals in chart 3, news in Ukraine, war preferring further pushing Russian, LNG and spike price, Ukraine beginning to debate in terms of linked debate, which is largely uncontested in terms of the perception of large decarb policies like plan. Now, Biden paused strong, Trump has overturned it, locked in 24 by his budget, the positive sports after the promise to be up for me, the positive in the real by 2025, it's blah blah. 24 puzzle still mark the speed bump, the visibility project and plan, CGD, effect lecture, bills by the export policy, add on a little bit left, depends on the election now. US experts are key, they can see the wall to have evidence, massive surge goes. LNG experts equally handily say Europe for energy crisis after Russian invasion becoming Europe's lifeline by more than double its supplies and enabling sanctions against Russian energy disruption. American LNG experts now transfer probably Europe's energy security in Ukraine to pass the walls and politics LNG. Pressing incur ruin political support left out at all 17 political support of national gas experts for the US mission to prices increase lead to expert restrictions for eventual objection with Korean similar situation. A significant price increase with the eventual lawmakers raise adverse impacts now. Last arc, the impact defense. What is wrong? Russia can continue Russia Italy, push her perception of weakness, revenge here. 24 Russian military budget is hiding where they only can allow Putin to invest in more machine and develop with a tactical ability to develop lower construction for the use of military budget with over to fight short high intensity wars for investment into capabilities to be cost effective military periods of the Russia's reign and the associated expected sales from natural resources being willing to avail to sustain high levels of spending by any means. Kremlin is a mass and a centrifugal nuclear arsenal warming. Defense, no warming, even extreme scenarios just proved that the extinction, the wing evidence had embedded words about adaptation that they dropped even 15 points or independently wrong. It proves other mitigation technologies, Nordhaus or Third 23, even out loud, just the original plus access to cancer with the diabetics, watch the force expand over the words of force of illustrating the ecosystem as a tender bit, hotter permafrost to the tissue percent protection released by 2100 review that full of active support for catastrophe, even under 6 degrees, the hot house is regular feedback by 0.4 by 2100 now, no acidification, impact oceans, animals are resilient, there's no conclusive data, every past mass extinction proves it, the innovation advantage. Turn fossil fuels are essential for U.S. AI development because the shift to unreliable renewable energy sources will undermine the substantial energy demands of AI technologies without robust fossil fuel-based energy grid. The U.S. risks losing competitive advantage in global AI race. That's how they miss the boat. The idea is not just an argument about a transition, but large feedback, but it's a time frame question. We say that an inevitable transition is going to happen in this way, which gives the grid and technology time to be able to finally being able to level things like AI and fix intermittency problems. Spot the information. Flip that on heads and makes it go too fast. AI innovation requires heaps of energy mills. 24 innovation followed by a number increasing energy consumption, electric car, every government with the jump of electricity demands, especially true for every chip uses as much of electricity as 3 electric vehicles have the type for chips and all the bid debate for power 3 times to grow the into AI to Google biz every 10 energy 10-fold of the in transition. Aspiration reality AI complex there are always ways to tail without more nat gas cut. And there this also reason that the LGDA also turns the advantage because if we don't have natural gas, specifically if they were through demand and US exports, we obviously can't solve renewables writ large now, top level, regardless of the innovation, the after it's ensures that we don't have enough energy to run and develop AI, which is the only innovation relevant to the AI. They haven't read specific evidence on this question, so you should get a pretty hard nay. Solvency. I'm going to do a bit of framing here because they've conceded an overshoot piece of evidence. We're not going to go for growth about it writ large, but it does mean that growth inevitably means that we're never able to resolve warming. So you can see that the negative also probably engages in growth, but the affirmative does too, which means no one can solve warming this big growth. It's unsustainable. The cyclical nature of growth and relation overshoot ensures system collapse. We've all passed but all what one planetary barrier is try or die for degrowth. That's the naive evidence, which means there's no way you can solve warming. I'm not sorry. Like, they dropped it. It was at the Homeland Plancy. Look at the speed shot. Multiple eco crisis independently assume that they can't solve it. Sea level rise, warming creates a glacial melt, which floats about the earth increasing, and growth means there will be a rate of biodiversity loss equals its next mass extinction. That also probably means that tipping points don't happen either to land change consider developing croplands, decimates key species to agriculture, which is another impact they can't solve because growth creates nitrogen and phosphorus cycles. Fertilizer is dependent on natural nitrogen and phosphorus reserve growth to deplete those, which fails food supplies, which often leads to our argument. They've also conceded that growth incentivizes chemical pollution because industrial synthetics always cause infectious disease and industry disruptors, but we don't care because it always leads to growth. I get that this is probably a really messy debate, but they have conceded a card that says, in a world of growth, you could never resolve warming. Those words were above. Green paradox. Green paradox here is the opposite of plans equal vulnerability future fossil fuel production encourages producers to ensure short-term production results in a spike in short and medium-term emission across in fossil fuel prices guiding any energy transition to prove that the best and most recent studies have to run and work with the most recent comprehensive evidence with most to trickle as we for bills that limit to the future only give shipping of the future the present will bring price with the markets expect legislation of these transition prices decrease shipping consumption to support consumption for pieces of evidence for when climate of the delivery track became persistent second relationship between RE and oil futures which obvious advances in RE as a threat square be linked deeply changing and probably a climate bill for the facts continuously increase magnitude that also answers every argument they have made about because all of their operation is not the point where producers determine things, like if they're going to ramp up production, which means that even if the app doesn't signal long-term reduction in oil prices, perceived the is deliberate means that there's still a spike.
Okay, are you ready for cross-X?
Give me a sec. I'm good.
Okay, so your interpretation on theory for the state's counterplan is just yes, you get to fiat both the federal government and the states.
It's specifically that we get to fiat those over devolution. Is good.
Okay, so you get to transfer authority from the federal government to the states and fiat both of those actors. Is that right?
I mean, yes.
Okay. This is necessary because it tests the Fed key warrant of the AF. Could you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, we think that there is a really rich debate to be had about both if the federal government should be the one making policies, and secondarily, if they should have jurisdiction over the choice to make those policies. We think there is a rich literature about devolution good versus bad. We think the AF gets a lot of disads.
Okay. Agree, rich literature over the jurisdiction question. How do we have those debates if the neg just fiats that the states have the jurisdiction?
We think that you should say that that's bad. We think that there are plenty of arguments about why devolving authority to the states could be bad. It is not our fault that you didn't read them.
Okay. They say, or you say having a Fed key warrant solves. Could you explain that as well?
We think that part of the affirmative's burden is not only to say that the Fed should be the one to engage in the action, but they should be the one to have sole jurisdiction, which was a lot of the preemption warrants, we assume. We still have to answer general deficits.
The Fed is the only body who has jurisdiction to do tariffs. Your counterplan means the states can also do that. So how does this solve our offense
I mean,
at all?
our counterplan doesn't mean that because it is not fiat as an area of devolution. Secondarily, I don't see why that is a unique question. Sure, like, any counterplan could say that the state should do tariffs.
Then I have a question about the counterplan text. So it does the AF at the state's level, like, you know, border adjusted carbon price, $40, does the subsidies, everything. You give states authority over federal lands. Do you also give them authority over tariffs?
We give them authority over interstate commerce, which was the 1NC text.
Great. Okay, the LNG DA, is the link just that decarbonization results in a shortage of energy that we give to other countries?
I think it's a bit more nuanced than that. We've made both a kind of question of production. U.S. producers will not think it is even worth keeping up LNG facilities because there is a trade-off between renewable energy. We've also made an internal link about CBAMs increasing Russian fossil fuel dependence in the mean term, or the interim.
Okay, and then lastly, the stuff about growth being inevitably destructive, isn't it better to like kind of try to solve warming because you're advocating for the status quo or the AF?
We think that it means that if the AF is engaged in growth because that's the innovation advantage, so is the neg. It means that it is a wash. No one can resolve warming, but that probably deletes the advantage because the 2AC dropped it.
Interesting. Okay, I don't want to do more questions.
It's been sent. Oh no, I've just been doing it all like this. CHL will be running my laptop. While people are pulling it up, or I guess like organizing flows, order is the oil disad, the China disad / counterplan, the rebate counterplan, and the politics disad. Jayhawks, are you?
1 minute.
I'm ready whenever Graham's good.
Yeah, just let me know. You're good. Okay. Adrian, Matt, Johnny. Concede that prices will rise inevitably. Demand shift means that profit will not be acquired because the renewable transition is globally inevitable, which takes as a turn. Now that China decided, will concede the permutation is just to test competition. I will also concede that China has a recession now, which takes out the trade part of it, but not the manufacturing internal link. on the dissatisfied shall explain more there. Regardless, conditionality, it is good. We get what we did. Reject on resolution 03, 1 strats, you want to see. Content is based on 1 to see time allocation. Column ensures that we can adjust it to AC strats gives 2. Neglect, counter checks. Concessionary ground 3, where world experts answer multiple alternatives simultaneously. 4, research focus every round on state generic counterplan kills load exploration, which is hard at the NDT 5. Testing and checks non-strategic advantages forces tailored offense boost education, which solves best offense 6. 2 ACSQ, another from T disades case defense 2 honor. Time on to solve 7. Dispo where impact turning it devolves into Kana because the neck can tag on blinks to form a permutation and no one agrees on what it means. Judge is also the logical consequence of conditionality. It's also a new F. F off. Rebate. Counterplay can see the permits just as test competition. Politics is at China. War returns and outweighs the affirmative. There's no defense. Our evidence is about escalation, not drawing the U.S. in inevitably. New technology, nuclear escalation from drawing in all other great powers. Intervention in the East and South China Sea and U.S. retaliation, even if the U.S. does not start a war first, turns the F. First is the innovation advantage. It causes technology weaponization, which causes revisionism. Second is that it turns warming because of nuclear winter. The first argument was doesn't pass. Wrong. Budget passes now. The GOP may be divided, but they're not going to stand in the way of Trump, which is the threshold and framing issue, which is the Toronto evidence. The Senate has taken the bill. Frecken and McCarthy. 4-4. The Senate divided into debate Friday on a budget to pass trillions in tax cuts. Republicans yielded to get a voting frenzy to vote on the plan. Senate is expected to approve Trump's assurances get it through Carney 4-3 after a delay. A last-minute rally in Senate took the first step to unlock the big, beautiful bill. Senators voted to proceed budget committee and through met with Trump, which appeared to win over the deficit hawks. Trump found to cut spending beyond the minimums. The conference also worried about the House cuts in Medicaid. Hawley's been outspoken concerns about Medicaid. He was on the fence and called Trump before he voted yes. The president said crystal clear the House, the Senate, and I will not sign a cut to Medicaid benefits. Special election wins means Trump's arms twisting is enough in the House. Guggenheim 4-3. Senate perhaps have a message for the House. You have to answer to Trump about his tax cuts. If we're hung up on 1 or 2 members, we need Trump to get them to recognize what's at stake. Twisty bad. Trump would have voted against soon if leaders want their tax bill next week. Hawks and the challenge the timeline. Senate allows $5.3 trillion. House calls for $4.5 trillion. Contingent spending cuts. There will not be a consensus until we sit with the White House. We come up with a final plan, then the president puts his full weight. Special elections help pass slim majority. Johnson can lose their members and march persuaded Freedom Caucus to vote for funding for the first time. Deficit Hawks has come out against the accounting. Roy Murphy and Squeakhead. It's a strategy to get to know where Trump's PC gets it done in both chambers. Actually, I'll answer that on the Trump's PC argument. Next argument is no trade-off. The bill is not months away. It's top of the docket. It has to be passed next week, which is the uniqueness evidence. Trump's using PC. Cal Bill 4-3 Trump. Through support to the Senate's budget plan, using calling Republicans to unify facing vote a Rama senators who touting Trump's endorsement as motivation to swiftly pass the resolution. Trump's PC gets it done. Effort at all 4-2. Still done. Quaker and nuts and bolts of a tax plan. The House is pending to cut $1.5 trillion while the Senate is leaving details for later. At some point, Trump is going to have to step in and help and share ideas. Trump has had to twist arms in his 3 months. He's concentrated on the House now. Since Senate's turn and his group remains strong, there's not much evidence. Reps will slow Trump's cuts as long as he uses the bully pulpit and pledges to keep working with conservatives. The meaning is that the party needs to come together to support the president now. The link debate they've dropped that the plan is unpopular. Trump will lose his marbles because it is seen as the quote-unquote woke left infiltrating it. Carbon pricing is also a political disaster. Causes things like high upfront costs, withdrawing opposition, and they have also dropped the link alone turns case because Republicans will inevitably backlash. Not going to read new evidence because they have not answered it. The next argument was that it doesn't unlock growth. Wrong. Tax reform bill is key to manufacturing NGBIA 25 in a urging Congress to deliver a jolt of certainty by renewing federal tax cuts. Manufacturing is capital intensive. U.S. planned years in advance ago cannot afford to wait, especially with terrorists with critical tax reform slats. Industry struggling to invest, innovate, and compete. Key for manufacturing divisions from 2017 have already phased out. They will put 6 million jobs at risk and make it harder to strengthen supply chains. Prefer that over their random, vague, vacuous evidence, and also does not have a predictability claim. Now, the next argument is that PC is low. Wrong. 1. I've answered that above with Trump's PC getting it done in both chambers, and they also made an argument that says that Trump's PC is not key. So group the two. I'm answering them. Trump's PC is key to the agenda. Brooks 25. Trump's the most important force keeping together, razor thin. GOP majority together, significant and getting on the same page. Trump's influence in helping Johnson get reelected. Trump calls holdout Self and Norman to sway them to switch votes with no bunch of era games in the House. REP as eager to pass the Trump agenda about tax cuts. There will be plenty of speed bumps and hurdles. Trump promises guarantee PC with Congress. Williams 25. Trump promises to solve problems with exchanges. The outcome is that Trump's first 100 days GOP have nothing to show. Is that PC as and it comes out backlash? What will Congress do if Trump begins acting on his own? Only Trump can temper GOP and fighting, which filters literally every argument that they've gone for. So try or die flips negative bogus 25. Rough try to wrap priorities into a single bill, hoping that tamps down and fighting push past internal disagreements over spending. Fiscal conservatives are adamant. Johnson include their rep type Trump will temper tensions to secure his legislative agenda. I guess I'll read an add-on for the impacts that go back up to it. Industrial dominance solves global hotspot escalation, even if they win the China defense. Johnson 24, ability to deter, decline, influence, not reduce China, no-code, China, Russia, Iran, Latin America, and Africa. Efforts of minimal questions, viability of nuclear deterrence to deterrence is found in industrial tank, econ, basic protection, the genesis of deterrence. Others match with capabilities, innovation, and tech advancements. U.S. demand less than inventory must be replenishment. Deterrence fails, industry will respond, makes negotiation, sanctions, and stats more effective. Other efforts are all U.S. supply chain is spread out, which hastens decline, market their extinction. COP 24, conflict with the PRC, stakes are higher, struggles to defend Taiwan, understood a series of battles that rage across the others, continue hostility. The PRC's industrial advantage have incentive to pursue protraction, impossible to disengage, is catastrophic as world wars and carry nuclear dangers. U.S. must prepare mobilization and industrial capacity, increasing property. PRC, Russia, no-code, and Iran threatens U.S. interests, providing opportunity for Russia to expand belligerence in Iran, regional dominance, reduce missile attacks, regular warfare, target nappers, U.S. force to respond simultaneously. U.S. military resources will be an ever greater demand. Decoupling of econ would follow any conflict. West phase worse as the PRC has been working to insulate itself. U.S. should focus on responses designed to degrade long-term objectives. That card was marked as objectives. I'll send those out. Sent where they're marked, a bunch of others.
Okay. 10 minutes.
No, we got 9.
Oh, 9:33, sorry. Okay. 606.
I did see
Sam, are we good for an order?
I have time.
Okay.
so remind me to also list the Slack. We can probably do. Oh, well, I guess we'll go later.
The doc with Sam, we're good for an order while we're waiting.
Yeah.
Advantage 1, warming. Advantage 2, innovation. The counter plan. I gotta get my flows in order. Oh, sorry, solvency after advantage 2. The state's counter plan. Politics. And then gas.
States and politics.
Yeah.
Okay. I have it and I'm good with it.
I'm also good.
Anyone already?
Yes, impact to warming, Venus effect, positive feedback, so methane, like methane and ice melt will desertify the planet, dropped, also causes nuclear war, food and water shortages, make states prone to political breakdown and resource wars, guarantees the inevitability of falling offense at Spangenberg, dropped, you should overcorrect Africa's humanity only has one planet, adaptation is naive, their evidence doesn't say it, it's so expensive it'll eat growth, removing its own resource base, and tail end risks will kick in before we have time to adjust, that's Spratt, Spangenberg, and Len, the Wang evidence is unrealistic because it assumes massive CCS scale up, is from the Breakthrough Institute, fringe techno-optimist, and is far too old to assume recent carbon sink collapse, which totally changed the game, could see no innovation, impact advantage 2, Europe war escalates, dropped, EU dissolution, winds back the clock to pre-World War I, no impact AI, it's useless, just spits out false results, and importantly the 2NC did not extend an impact, false fuels control it, they're unreliable, and they're unreliable, which will be on the LNG page, they've also functionally dropped 2EC, more silly, fossil fuels go down inevitably because they are incredibly vulnerable, fossil fuels spike electricity prices, renewable self and demand rationing cushions, selling their 24, the volatility of fossil mixes, increasing north dependence on gas, mosquito, the prices, green prices, worth 20% initial breaks, free people. Obviously, risk lack of clean energy affects electricity. With clean energy locks and prices for decades means there fluctuations that can be misstored for restoring higher demand and like this increasing data storage, reducing demand for energy better appliances, and more so that we can cut electricity bills. It's willing that the plan scales up renewables via a bunch of awesome clean technology. It means that we fill in for their stuff about requiring lots of energy, which solves their Mills evidence. It certainly does not turn advantage to our internal link. It's not about innovation in general in the abstract, but about specifically exporting low carbon technology to Europe and that crowding out China from having a lot of influence over the grid, which they've dropped will fracture the EU, which answers the rest of their stuff. And again, they did not extend an impact or a warranted turns case argument. Solvency, overshoot, not inevitable, explicitly answered in the 2EC flow check. We're approaching the tipping point, but the rev assumes the square with dirty growth, not the plan. Apply, try, or die, because you know the square will cook the planet. Tipping points are on the other page, and there's no link to degrowth, so I'm not going to answer chemicals, no green paradox. Our mechanism blocks fossil fuel use in the ground, drop subsidy, solve it by pricing fossil fuels out of the market. The state's counter plan. Permanent growth gives the state's leadership over climate policy, enables pockets of co-op. Simply involving the Fed doesn't mean state action is viewed as disingenuous. Their card does not say mutually exclusive. It fiats through devolution at the top. The counter plan doesn't solve devolution in other areas. Double taxation is double solvency, no strike down. The warrant is overlapping authority, but the perm fiats through that, and again, their card does not say strike down. Now, no turns case co-op isn't necessary. That's not our internal link. It's about coercing other states to decarbonize via the stake of the BCA. They functionally drop the deficit. Counterplan only gives states authority over federal lands. Dropping a BCA still gets struck down. Interstate commerce doesn't solve since tariffs are about the import-export clause, not the commerce clause. That's Gorsuch, what they've dropped. Kita modeling theory, no state and federal.
Come back to it if you have time.
Okay, the politics DA. China can't outweigh dialogue and off-ramps cap their impact, but you can't negotiate with the environment. Turns innovation and warming was incoherent. Case turns the DA. They've dropped that warming will eat the economy alive, eroding our manufacturing base. Thumpers drop tariffs will destroy the global economy on the other age. And they dropped U.S. recession now, which spills over to manufacturing now. Won't pass. Deficit spending's unpopular to alienate talks. They want to bite the bullet of $5 trillion of unfunded debt. Spending disagreements are whipsaw in the House. The threshold is 3 votes to 93-28. House savings from Medicaid and SNAP, putting them on a collision course with moderates and members from the working class areas upon which UP is here in the House to see majority of the I've already got 5 no's. Left for 3. Cole said, put up or shut up about spending. Arlington, I concurred. Other House Hawks include Ashton Rick Smucker and a rope when the Senate is big and with spending it. I may not pass the House now. Senate also defects. The threshold is 4 votes. Paul is always a no. Johnson and Lee are a no. If the House is slim with spending cuts, Sherman 328. Senate 2P can't lose more than 3. Paul is a no. Johnson and Lee 1 more cuts in the House is $1.5 trillion. So is Scott Green's 327. Budget hawks such as Scott demanded additional cuts beyond $2 trillion sought by the House and Cassidy Rubin for 2. Senate voted to close. Cassidy said it's worrying of increasing budget deficits. The House is at $2 trillion, which is insufficient for Senate hawks and requires cutting Medicaid. Chanel 331. The House of Blueprint called for $1.5 trillion to the target of $2 trillion. So that was require slashes to Medicaid cutting. Medicaid loses Holly and Justice. Rubin 331. The Senate papers over divisions where Holly and Justice warn about Medicaid cuts. Reject their evidence. Their frecking card just as the Senate will debate the bill. Not that it'll pass in PC. Will be answered below. Drop down. PC is low. Trump just dropped a nuke on the global economy. His approval ratings through the floor and is driving his agenda into off a cliff with Musk and Doge destroying the government. Getting it done in both chambers is ridiculous. No one will listen to him if he's the taboo man in Washington. Tempering GOP infighting is done if everyone hates his agenda. And the GOP is going rogue against tariffs now. PC is back thanks to tariffs and unpopularity affairs 314. Trump already squandered whatever PC has earned on against tariffs and markets don't believe Americans have a negative view of Trump because of political advantage. Musk's role also contributed to Trump's minors don't look at continue subservience to his foreign policy minors 227. Trump threatened Canada, Greenland, and Palestinian Baltic councils reset with Russia. He is sacrificing his PC job between allies. Good?
Yep.
Okay, yes. At the top, they drop the methane thumper headshots. The DA super recent post-state's uniqueness and no evidence assumes it. No direct on-point answer, so give to Chewy our maximum lenience now. Glut now will destroy the industry. That's Bernard 1. Supply mismatches demand even with demand upticks, which answers their only warrant for 25. Hydrogen and biomethane LNG demand decrease Europe. Japan, Korea, China markets. Africa decrease LNG in favor of nuclear renewable meanwhile. LNG will turns out over LNG in 2025 decide. As like a demand will make house a short uptick in demand markets. After growing incredible rates of reserve supply, these LNG over stranded assets likely with Trump equity, but global demand will increase. Approved capacity will still result in a grab 2 is Trump. Pretty 25 US says nobody doubling energy based on projects were already to approve of the financing that could be impacted by tariffs which render American supplies non-competitive. No carbon tariff links. It's stumped by existing tariffs. There's no link to the average. We see match evidence says that LNG is a bridge fuel. They've dropped to the point starting low. It means that we can use LNG now as a backstop to European energy security, which means that Europe will only transition when they know it makes economic sense. They will not voluntarily unhook themselves from gas if they think it would destroy their economies. Renewables solve the link. They are far better and more robust source of energy security because they are perpetual, which I've already explained on the other page, because LNG is vulnerable to trade diversion and uniqueness. Now, their argument about carbon tariffs being bad, their evidence is about Europe's CBAM, which shapes out uniqueness. And again, Trump tariffs logically thump all of this too. There's no way to make fossil fuels a secure form of energy, losing 22 products need ships, pipelines, and facilities to recharge LNG terminals are sufficiently through view, so consumers buy from 40s dynamics that were banned use for news energy on market that can be fixed in hopes of pivot war with liquid projects to determine on global markets use. I can influence prices, but I can't control this, especially not quickly can the US small self-offer volatility. No impact. They've lost 300, Russia's lost 300,000 troops in Ukraine, have no incentive to expand a new front, and sanctions deter, which is a drop warrant. That's Wall.
I'm gonna run the restroom very quickly.
Oh, sorry, it's so tight.
You're okay. You're so okay.
So it's just like.
LNG disadvantage, the tax cuts disadvantage, the state's counterplan, the solvency page, the warming page, and then the China EU page. Are we good? Awesome.
The LNG disadvantage will concede the impact defense, there's no offense. The cuts DA, concede, never gonna pass, and PC is low and irrelevant. There's no offense on this page, the state's counterplan.
Yeah. I just left it to you.
Devolution Sol's case results in the same prohibitions of the Act after states exercise enforcement authority guaranteed by them by the federal judiciary, even if you're skeptical, default to sufficiency frame because they dropped truancy add-on, which outweighs and mitigates modeling arguments, which they haven't read a terminal to. Now, rolling back federal control through devolution is essential to restore state sovereignty, to reduce the power of political elites, and preserve the nation's unity by decentralizing government. This shift allows the federal government to focus on core responsibilities, national security, while empowering states to manage domestic policies more effectively for air accountability. Otherwise, extinction is an impact filter, no defense. Even if you think that is a little silly or under-warranted, they've clean dropped it, and at a very minimum means that they can't resolve cases. Embedded warrant in the COVID evidence that says that the only way that states will be able to do climate policies is if the federal government stops taking on too much power, which is the reason that the states internally are the only people able to effectively manage the plan. Secondarily, they've conceded that there is too much state overstretch, which means they will probably backlash to federal government and overstretch, which is conceded internally in the devolution argument, the 1 and C, which means that you should assume that both the states will be against the policy and refuse to implement things on lower levels, but secondarily is the only way to stop civil war, which obviously turns things like our modeling and leadership advantage. Now, I'm going to answer Tara's case. Defense will answer it. What? I'm not sure what this tariff argument is, but they have conceded that we are able to do it on federal land because that was exactly what the 1C tax mandated. Then they make this argument about the commerce clause or being about export import. First of all, the worship evidence is not in a general context. It talks both about the domestic commerce colors and interstate commerce colors, but secondarily, they haven't extended impact. They say key to modeling, but you should look at your flow on the warming advantage. They have not said a single reason why border carbon adjustment is key to solve. Their main solvency claims are just about the affirmative being key to incentivize marketization that leads to innovation of green tech. Even if you think there is a risk of modeling claims, civil war obviously decks the world and means that because states will not be able to cooperate, which means there will be interstate leakage, which obviously means that national is largely irrelevant. They haven't extended a solvency claim that requires that or us to win things like countries like China will follow on. Now I'm going to do the perm debate because it's where they put most of their eggs. First, it creates a double tax overlap with guarantees regulatory failure. Double solvency was underwarranted and incoherent. It creates market distortions and undermined credit, which causes industry uncertainty. There's no reason that would be good because they haven't provided a reason why a double tax is necessary to resolve the affirmative. 2, it gets struck down. It's literally unconstitutional, which deletes signaling because it's about certainty that obviously internally turns their modeling deficits, and no one erring on this means that's the key question. You can't just say it isn't struck down. We have both said that the government will strongly oppose it, and secondarily is unconstitutional, so there's a double bind. Either you should assume that their deficits will not be acted on because no one really cares if things are unconstitutional, which means that you should vote negative because we obviously resolved the case with zero solvency deficits, or you can just assume that they apply equally to the affirmative, which means that double taxes will also get struck down, which means the permutation is at 0, 3, it links to all of their solvency evidence or deficits. Duplication means the states will preempt. Congress intends to preempt an authority conflict, so only the counterplan solves, but the perm destroys it. 4, hedging bets. Perms can't solve the devolution net benefit because it's a core question of broadly showing the states that they now have individual jurisdiction. The COVID evidence is super specific, and they have nothing that holds the claim to it. Now they dropped the China internal net benefit. Now the counterplan solves. It creates bilateral climate action between U.S. states and Chinese provinces. It solves federal gridlock by creating direct transfer cooperation between sub-national actors across nations. Implements climate initiatives, same as the plan, but they're decentralized. That's the die evidence. You can see it in a ways. 3, impacts 1. Climate change is irreversible with the tipping point now. China and the U.S. are the biggest emitters. This will also be the only modeling claim that you'll be able to hang your ballot on. That means that you can only vote negative on modeling because they don't have not a single reason why they get countries like China to follow on, which they've conceded is the biggest emitter, which means that that is an internal reason why the counterplay is the only one who can solve the first advantage. Second, pandemics, clean drop, the spread past, COVID puts on the brink, isolation, prevent successful COVID, global collaboration, create vaccines, prevention, or mitigation. That also means that we won't have global collaboration, which obviously will be able to check against things like EU war, which is the internal link change to their Solvency 3. They conceded runaway tech. We can't control new advances picked no new existential threats. We can't preempt that weighs on the Hydra bill. Place checks on escalation. Maybe I didn't extend the turn impact proper on the China advantage, but we did extend a scenario of a runaway tech, which is exactly the AI scenario in the one end scene. Anything else?
No.
Oh, actually, I'll answer the Trump stuff. The last argument, perm do both. They have conceded the die evidence. It says that the Trump administration has retreated from Paris in creative way that only California could have stepped in to fail. That's internal warning. We're so national governments are key. China views the U.S. federal government as unwilling to act on climate negotiations, which means that they only can trust the states. There's also too much political turmoil, which means that they do not think the cooperation between the two countries under Trump is guaranteed, but they can trust national governments, even if it doesn't give us the China net benefit. Is obviously internal thumper to the warming advantage, both because they concede the Chinese key is solved, but secondarily because Trump obviously will fight back against climate policies. Case. I'm only going for one argument on the solvency page because it's mishandled. It takes literally everything else. First, the green paradox used climate policies by encouraging fossil fuel producers to hasten extraction in response to future restrictions, resulting in heightened consumption, lower prices. They counteract regulatory effects to reduce fossil fuel use. The big issue is they drop the second neural and empirical evidence read in the 2NC that says that the question of when deliberation happens is the moment a climate bill like the affirmative is deliberated. That is the moment the gas producers determine they are going to pump and pump and pump until they can't anymore, which means they can't resolve either advantage. Their only answer is the app is big, but that misses deliberation question.
606.
Is it like hot over here?
Solvency. You all good? John, you good?
Warming outweighs literally everything. The Earth is barreling towards a Venus state that is too hot for human habitation. It cooks the planet alive and guarantees inevitability of all mega offense through resource wars over dwindling water and food supplies. It breaks the planet apart and precedes every impact because it is both fast and guarantees extinction. Every identified impact of devolution, civil wars, war with China, rogue tech. Those are all inevitable in World War. Our planet is being cooked alive by CO2 in the atmosphere and government's breakdown over resource fighting guarantees we cannot have any sort of regulatory body that prevents the type of impacts that the Cannibal tries to solve. Also, pandemics, the release of permafrost superbugs that kill everyone on the planet. Green paradox is wrong. Hastening extraction is still priced by the app, and those fossil fuels never get burned if our subsidies quickly scale up. Green tax, since those fill the market for energy and are more likely to be favored since they can avoid the tax. 1AC Withagen says the plan, quote, locks fossil fuels into the crust. A tax based on damage of CO2 is the ideal version to prevent the green paradox, since it economically is equivalent to carbon damages. You must be absolutely certain the app is worse for warming for the speed and egg balance. Is the Cannibal equally links to this and try or die? Flips app if we win the risk of the deficit. Go to the Cannibal now. The Cannibal cannot solve the case. Do not risk the future of the planet on undergraduate legal spin and gotcha moments when this Cannibal is unquestionably illegal and does not absolutely leave it unambiguous that it gives the power of the states to do a BCA to the courts. Minnesota does not get to lie and say the Cannibal gives the states the authority to do a BCA. They wrote their Cannibal to solve two common app deficits on this topic. One, interstate commerce, i.e. state trade barriers between other states like Kansas and Missouri. Two, the federal lands deficit. The states cannot tax them. Do I really need to get out my pocket constitution here? States cannot jurisdictionally do a BCA because it violates the import-export clause of the Constitution. Quote, no state shall levy any duty on foreign nations. That is neither the interstate commerce clause, and that's a whole different legal question the Cannibal might solve, but they're too NC neglected to answer this particular deficit of our Gorsuch evidence. It matters. The Cannibal's BCA portion being struck down guarantees every fossil fuel polluter flees the country and keeps selling their dirty goods back into the U.S. It also fails to convince every other country internationally about the necessity of modeling a carbon price, i.e. do we have to, what is our coercive leverage to get other states to model a plan? You have to leave it absolutely unambiguous legally, otherwise the conservative judiciary is going to say no and remove the BCA portion of the Cannibal that is necessary for warming solvency, the only portion of the Cannibal that fiats the federal government, gives the states the jurisdiction over other areas in the Constitution. The federal government still has complete fiated power to destroy the counterplan legally, and absolutely no interpretation of abusive negative fiat can justify that. Okay, in case I really need to spell this out, their Cannibal devolves interstate commerce and federal lands, not tariff authority or taxes on other countries. I'll do the line by line here. They say drop 2NC add-on about rolling back federal control. Please, Minnesota, flow my partner's speeches. They're really good. Graham said that they do not solve devolution over literally every single issue. The federal government still exists. They still have the power to preempt states through ignoring the 10th Amendment. The Twin Arm does not have a threshold for at what point devolution is no longer powerful enough. At what point do states need to solve stuff? But let's be real. We all have zero idea how they're going to solve any of this ridiculous stuff about civil war or geoengineering and technology after the Cannibal. Anyways, the backlash to federal overstretch cannot impede the plan. It is unexplained, and it doesn't explain what they will do. This is processed Cannibal and Trico trash that is not substantiated in any of their shoddily highlighted evidence. Again, civil war impact. How do we get from devolution to Cannibal and solve civil war? What? I mean, what with like 3 question marks? This is so unexplained. Tunar says they don't know what the tariff argument is. Crystal clear argument that they dropped a deficit in the Tweezy. Our Gorsuch evidence says that states cannot tariff other countries to do a BCA to convince them to adopt a carbon price. They say this is in a general context and it is about interstate commerce. It is in fact not, and we selected and cultivated this evidence to beat the counterplan that gave states the power over interstate commerce, because this is about trade barriers on other countries, which the Constitution unambiguously says that states cannot do. They say that we don't have a modeling key claim in the 1AC. We did say modeling if you freaking flowed the 1AC. Our BCA necessary argument is that we convince other countries to, quote, induce virtuous policy changes abroad, which is our 1AC Wolfram evidence, including modeling the plan. The 2AC even said that it, quote, fails to convince other states to get aboard mitigation if this portion of the Cannibal is struck down. Anything about civil war impeding plain solvency solved by the permutation, which I will extend now. If you think that a deficit is very, very small, perm to both zeros or offense, it means states get sovereignty and authorities to conduct their own climate policy independently of the federal government. Big framing issue for adjudicating this portion of the debate. There is a massive neg claim card mismatch between our story of how the perm operates and is completely ungrounded in evidence. None of their evidence substantiates mutual exclusivity, and I don't think they cited a card by name. Their answers are 1, double tax, no shot. If anything, it is a net benefit to the perm because it means we get unhooked from fossil fuels even faster than the Cannibal alone. The card doesn't say anything about their Cannibal doesn't say anything about those things being mutually exclusive. Twin C Frank Hauser is highlighted to oblivion. I actually think the tag is longer than the text they've highlighted, and it lacks a warrant, zero impact to uncertainty or strike down in this context. If anything, firms would just hedge their bets and go to net zero future as quickly as possible. Double taxes aren't unconstitutional. Again, their card doesn't say that, and the perm devolves authority to the state, so it resolves any legal concerns about having conflicting taxes. I don't know what they were trying to do with this double tax business, but the plan is not unconstitutional. Duplication doesn't link. Again, we don't read a certainty deficit in the direction of that. Uncertainty would cause firms to overcorrect towards renewables too. It solves devolution. The kind of just fiat the Supreme Court devolves relevant authority to the states, and that's a clear signal of independent state authority. Even if the Fed acts in concert. 3, distrusting Trump as a swing and a miss. The perm still solves that because it carves out independent constitutional space for states to state initiatives. The perm is still a boon for co-op between subnational actors because post-Cat 1, they all get authority. They wanted to conduct climate diplomacy unhinged from preemption concerns. Political turmoil is inevitable. Obviously, Trump will do what he wants, but the Cat 1's mandate just straight out fiats. The states can launch their own climate coalitions that are insulated from Trump. Their deficit is question begging. Winning the states are better than the federal government, and the abstract is irrelevant. The perm just fiats through fictional trade-off. Last argument I will answer is their impact scenarios are all resolved by that permutation argument because it gives the states the same authority to do the app, solves pandemics, runaway technology, as well as any net benefit that Canada has for getting China to model a plan because it results in them doing climate diplomacy themselves. It cannot possibly be mutually exclusive because it has a state do a carbon tax and the federal government do a carbon tax. Double taxation is unexplained. It also probably doubles solvency for warming. Durable fiat, both the Canada and the plan have been strike down, and it's obviously not mutually exclusive because it's not two actions that are incompatible with one another if the states do the tax and the federal government does them as well.
If China views the USFG as unwilling to act on climate, the plan solves that.
If China views the USFG as unwilling to act on climate, the plan solves it through a BCA trade stick that would persuasively argue that they should model the plan. Good debate. Do you want cards?